we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I am your host, Kenneth, and it's great to have everybody here on this Tuesday, January 9th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, with that being said, let's get right into what we will talk about. So, we will talk about last night's national championship game, the Wolverines defeating the Washington Huskies in that matchup. The final score ended up being 34-13. So, we'll get into that in just a second. In the second part of the show, we'll talk about the Packers and their run to the playoffs, how they got there, and what to expect going into this playoff game against the Cowboys, which I talked about it a little bit yesterday. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the NFC South, the Bucs clinching the NFC South. I know I touched upon it briefly, but again, go into more detail with it today. And then we will cap off the show by talking about the Steelers getting in, because that was another team where it looked like they were dead in the water, and they somehow made it. So we'll talk about that as well. So let's get right into the first topic, which is talking about the national championship from last night. So I was hoping for a better game, but we didn't really get that. Now, it was close at one point, but Michigan did pull away at the end. So we'll go through the game. So Michigan, they started off the game with a touchdown, 8 plays, 84 yards, almost 5 minutes of time of possession, and their first touchdown from their other running back, Donovan Edwards. So he got them started. That was a 41-yard touchdown. That was on 2nd and 14. So that put Michigan up 7-0. And then Washington answered with a field goal. They went 14 plays, 67 yards, 6 minutes, 18 seconds of time of possession down the field. They got a field goal, 25-yard field goal. So that made it 7-3. And then Michigan scored yet another touchdown. Donovan Edwards again from 46 yards. So obviously he's the number two. He's the other running back, because you also have Blake Corum there as well. So Michigan was up 14-3. Washington punted, then Michigan kicked a field goal. So it was 17-3 after the first quarter. Then Washington, they turned it over on downs. They went for it on 4th and 7 at Michigan's 47. They didn't get it. Michigan then punted. Washington punted. Then Michigan turned it over on downs. And this was pretty much right before the end of the first half. Washington ended up scoring a touchdown. That was on 4th and goal for Michigan's 3. Michael Penix hit McMillan for a 3-yard touchdown reception. There was a defensive holding on the play, but obviously that got declined. So it was 17-10 at the half, and you're like, okay, all right, so this is still a game. But then literally the first play of the second half, Michael Penix threw a pick. Fortunately for them, Michigan had to kick a field goal, so it was only 20-10. Then Washington kicked a field goal, so it was 20-13. Then they were punched the rest of the third quarter. 2 punts to start the fourth quarter, and then Michigan scored another touchdown. J.J. McCarthy, it was set up by a 41-yard pass play that led to eventually a Blake Corum 12-yard touchdown to put them up 27-13. Then Michael Penix threw another pick. Michigan then turned that into a touchdown. Blake Corum a 1-yard touchdown. And then Washington turned it over on downs. And yeah, that was basically it. 34-13, the final score. And for the stats, for the Wolverines, J.J. McCarthy only went 10 of 18 for 140 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The Michigan running game, that really Washington really had no answers. They ran the ball for over 300 yards, 303 yards rushing, 4 rushing touchdowns, 2 from Edwards and 2 from Blake Corum. Blake Corum actually ended up having more rushing yards than Edwards, 134 yards. Even with those 2 big runs, Blake Corum, 21 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. Donovan Edwards, 6 carries for 104 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those 2 big touchdown runs really, helped his numbers. But yeah, they had 303 yards rushing in total. And then in the receiving game, Colston Loveland, the tight end, he had 3 receptions for 64 yards. Roman Wilson, 3 for 54. And Cornelius Johnson had 3 for 25. And then, obviously they had a couple of turnovers in the game. And how many sacks did they have in the game? Oh, they only ended up having 1 sack. But that Michigan defense was giving Michael Penix problems all night long. And he actually got banged up in this game too. So his numbers on the day, 27 of 51, 255 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. They only ran the ball for 46 yards. And then their leading receiver was Roma Dunze. Sorry if I can't pronounce that. But yeah, he was their leading receiver. And listen, Washington had their opportunities. Michael Penix, missed some throws in the game. Was under pressure a lot. But Michigan, like I said, only had 1 sack. So, but they just the game was close. But early on, again, like I'm not a college football expert, but Michigan's running game was just, they were imposing their will against Washington's defense. Washington really had no answers. Again, there was that big pass play late in the game by J.J. McCarthy, but other than that, like there really wasn't a lot of big plays through the air for Michigan. And, they didn't really have to do that when, you run the ball for 300 yards in the game. But yeah, Michigan, they get their first national championship since it was 1997 was the last time they won, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so it's first national championship since 1997. And listen, they've been one of the best teams in college football the last 3 seasons, a 40-3 record, 3 Big Ten titles, 3 college football playoff appearances, and a national championship. And that was the one thing, with Jim Harbaugh, is can he get over the hump? He finally beat Ohio State because that was always an issue. He was able to do that. They made the playoffs, of course, and now they got the national championship. And there's, again, I talked about this. There's still some speculation on whether he's, maybe could go back to the NFL. But we'll see what happens. But, obviously there was a lot going on this year with Michigan with the cheating scandal and, him being suspended for the few games. But it didn't matter. They ended up capping off this undefeated season with the national championship. This was, the best team. They were able to beat Alabama to get to this point, which obviously Alabama is a team that's always in the college football playoff, even for somebody that doesn't really watch college that much. But you could tell, this is why Michigan was the best team. And listen, their defense last night again showed out. Because Michael Penix, you go back to the week before that against Texas. Had a great game, and now you go up against the best team in the country, and they gave him a lot of problems. And a lot of those guys very emotional after the game. Washington had some rough years that he was a part of, and they were able to turn it around and put together a great season and get to this point. And Michael Penix, it could be we'll see what happens when it comes to the NFL. I didn't realize his injury history either, because I was watching, some pregame, before the game, and I didn't realize, what his injury history was, and that's because they were talking about, you know, him going to the NFL, and that's the one thing is his injury history, um, and he got banged up last night. So yeah, he actually I didn't know he came back from two ACL tears. I was not aware of that. Um, and obviously when you're going into the NFL, yeah, it's a um, definitely it's a lot different. It really is. So and obviously within the in the coming months, we'll talk about you know mock drafts and things like that. Um, where he potentially gets drafted. But he put together a great season. If I could just pull up his stats again. Um, 35 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. 4,600 yards passing. We'll see where he ends up. Um, but yeah, it was tough. And that was the matchup that everybody was talking about. A lot of people were talking about going in is Washington has a great offensive line. How would that hold up against this Michigan defense? And yeah, he was off his spot. And again he missed some throws. I remember in the game they had a big play that then got called back. But they also had a walk-in touchdown. I forget where. I think it was on one of the possessions where they turned it over on downs. Let me see if I can go back to that. That was because I was in the first half. Let's see if I can remember where it was. I think it was in. Let's see. Yeah. It was. It was on the. I think it was on the 4th and 7 play. He had a wide open receiver and he missed him. And I think that would have been a walk. That would have been a walk-in touchdown. That would have changed the game, but that unfortunately didn't happen. And then, of course, like I said, there was another big play in the game, and they ended up, it got called back. So again, Washington had their opportunities, but they just, again, Michael Penix missed some throws, and then he had a penalty, a costly penalty that set him back. So, but they had a great season, but they're going to go through some changes, of course. And Michigan, let's see what happens with them. Is Harbaugh still going to be the coach, or is he going to go back to the NFL? We'll see. A lot of celebrities were there last night. I know they panned to the one suite that had Spike Lee and Derek Jeter, Michael Jordan, Stephen A. Smith, Travis Scott, like everybody. There was a lot of people there. Of course, you had John Harbaugh, who's there. We'll see. Obviously, we're going to talk about him a lot over the next couple of weeks. With the Ravens being the 1 seed. We could see the Harbaugh brothers winning championships in 2024, So, but yeah, again, I was hoping for a better game. I did pick Washington to cover the 5.5 or the 5, whatever it was, but that did not happen. I did say Michigan was going to win, of course. But yeah, so for the person that said I was going to go 0-2 with the college football playoff games last week, the semifinals. It was probably happy that I, didn't get the spread pick right, but I got the straight up pick right. I was still going with Michigan just because, they have been the best team. So, but I would have liked to seen, Michael Penix maybe win just because, a fellow lefty, lefty quarterback. But yeah, so that's basically it when talking about this topic. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about the NFL side of things. We'll talk about some of the other teams that made the playoffs, because I know yesterday I went through the NFC East, the AFC East, the Texans winning, but now let's talk about some of these other playoff teams as well. Starting off with the Packers, we'll talk about them making the playoffs. With Jordan Love now as the quarterback. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. Oh, and we're back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second part of the show, and we'll show that again a little later in the segment, or at the end of the segment. And for the second part of the show, we're going to talk about the Packers making the playoffs again, but now with Jordan Love as the quarterback. So it's really interesting. This team, they were a roller coaster this year. You know, they started off good, then they struggled, then they were one of the hottest teams in the NFL, and then they lost 2 straight, and you thought, yep, they got no shot at making the playoffs. And then they were able to win their final 3 games to get in. And this is with Jordan Love as the quarterback. Because last year, you know, there was a lot of changes. You still had Aaron Rodgers, but, you know, you had Romeo Doubs now, Christian Watson. You know, it was different. You know, there was no Devontae Adams. But this team, you know, missed the playoffs by a game. You know, ended up losing to the Lions, final game of the regular season, getting knocked out. The Lions had nothing to play for. They were eliminated, you know, earlier in the day. And with Aaron Rodgers, his last game as a Packer, they ended up missing the playoffs. So here, again, you came off of a blowout win against the Vikings, which, you know, they were coming off a blowout win against the Vikings last year and lost. You thought, you know, with the Bears coming in and how well they've been playing as of late, you know, you thought, maybe it's going to be the same thing, you know, but that wasn't the case. The Packers were able to get the win. They won 17-9. It was still a close game, but you know, but the Bears, their offense really couldn't get anything going. I mean, they kicked a field goal on their first possession, but I mean, they could not get anything going. They really couldn't, you know. I don't know what happened. I don't know. They've been a different team offensively, you know, the last couple of weeks, and they play against the Packers, and you know how the Packers defense has been playing. You know, you thought the Bears were going to be able to come in and, you know, move the ball effectively against them, and they just weren't able to. And Jordan Love, you know, he passed for over 300 yards, had 2 touchdowns in the game. I know Dontavian Wicks. I think he had both. Did he have both touchdowns in the game? Because I don't have the. I didn't pull up the game. So yeah, Jordan Love 2 touchdowns. Actually, yeah, Dontavian Wicks had both touchdowns in the game. Jaden Reed was our leading receiver, 4 receptions for 112 yards. Bo Melton 5 for 62. Tucker Kraft. Actually, I didn't even know Musgrave played in the game. Because he's been on IR for a while. Romeo Doubs only had 1 target in the game. But and Aaron Jones, you know, the last 2 weeks, over 100 yards rushing. That's huge. Actually, no, the last 3 weeks, including the Panthers game. They had no A.J. Dillon in the game. And Justin Fields, 148 yards passing, 11 for 16, 75 yards on the ground. 28 by Herbert, 27 by Fields, 20 by Roschon Johnson. DJ Moore was their leading receiver, 4 for 64. But yeah, the Packers got the win. And yeah, I mean, you look at the weeks before that. I mean, you know, the Bears, I mean, they put up 37 on the Falcons. You know, they almost beat the Browns. But yeah, they just couldn't get anything going against the Packers. And, you know, it's part of the reason is because the Packers own the Bears. You know, and that's continuing. But I give the Packers a lot of credit because, again, it's been a roller coaster of a season. You know, not a lot of people expected them to make the playoffs. You know, I said early on in the season, I'm like, you know, with the NFC being weak, maybe they could be a playoff team because they were almost won last year. It's just you got a quarterback change. And, you know, the way Jordan Love was playing at the beginning of the season, it wasn't that crazy to say. But then they started struggling. I mean, you lose to the Raiders, the Broncos. I mean, they got blown out at home by the Lions. Before that, but the Lions is, you know, you can understand. But the Raiders, like, you know, and how they were before Antonio Pierce took over, it just it wasn't looking good for the Packers. But then they turned it around. You know, they had that thrilling win against the Chargers. You know, I mean, they played a little bit better against the Steelers, even though they lost that. But Jordan Love has been, they went on when they won on Thanksgiving, that was when people were like, okay, this team, could be could make a second half push here. They started playing well, and then they lost their next two games. They lose to Tommy DeVito, and then Baker Mayfield has a perfect passer rating in Lambeau Field, and you're like, all right, well, this season might be over. And then they won 3 straight to finish off the year. And Jordan Love has played well. He ended up having better stats than Aaron Rodgers his first season. Or because I saw from Colin Cowherd's show. Let's see if I could find it, because I took a screenshot of it. Oh yeah, so this is the final 10 games from comparing Rodgers last year to Love this year. So the Packers went 5-5. So these are Rodgers stats from last year. So the Packers went 5-5. Now I just lost it again. Because I screenshotted it on my camera roll. Yeah. So Rodgers went 5-5, 62.8 completion percentage, 209.8 passing yards per game, a 15-9 touchdown to interception ratio, and then an 87.9 passer rating. Then you look at Jordan Love, final 10 games this year, 7-3, 68.7 completion percentage, 266.7 passing yards per game, 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, and the caption kind of cuts it off, but it's, I think, is it a 108? It's either a 108 or a 106.2 passer rating. I mean, Jordan Love was a better quarterback this year than Aaron Rodgers was last year, and I don't want to disrespect Aaron Rodgers because he's one of my favorite players of all time, but those are the numbers, and credit to Jordan Love. And listen, people didn't think he was the guy, with how he was struggling this year, and it looked like the Packers got it wrong. But now you're in the playoffs with a very young team. It's funny, they're talking about how all the receivers on their roster make a combined $7 million. Well, I was watching the Michael Kay show. What did they say? It was a combined $7 million, the receivers. And Alan Lazard, by himself, is making more money, which is insane. But yeah, I mean, you got all these guys Heath and Bo Melton, who I've never heard of. And then you got Jaden Reed, who they drafted. Dontavian Wicks, another rookie. Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson in their second years. They got a good receiving core, a good young receiving core. And then you got Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave, the young tight ends. This is a good young offense, and it's only going to continue to grow with Jordan Love. The oldest player on that offense is Aaron Jones, and we'll see what the Packers end up doing with him at the end of the season. But you got to like the direction that the Packers are heading in. Obviously, the defense with Joe Barry, although the last couple of weeks he's called a good game. Even though, you're going up against Jaron Hall with the Vikings. So, it's not like you were going up against an elite quarterback. But Justin Fields has been playing better, and that Bears offense has been playing better as of late. So they did a good job limiting them. It's going into Dallas, it's going to be a tall task, because Dallas has been playing so well at home. And the Packers defense is going to give up a lot of points. It is. Now, I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm hoping they surprise people, shock the world, and the Packers beat the Cowboys in the playoffs once again. But this is a different team. And, whatever happens with the Packers, if they end up getting blown out, this year was still a successful season because now they can build off of this. And now they got Aaron Rodgers. He's with the Jets now. He's, in some ways their problem now. They got out from underneath that situation because, that was the talk of the offseason, for the last couple of years. Is what is he going to do? And, people say he's kind of held them hostage and they were able to trade him. And, now with the team that they're building there without him, it's a playoff team. And you got to give them credit. Got to give Matt LaFleur credit too, because I've had my criticisms of him as well. I kind of questioned him as a coach, because Aaron Rodgers kind of inflated the record that he has. The record that he has because of Aaron Rodgers. But But this year, with the struggles that they dealt with and the fact that they were able to turn it around and make the playoffs, you got to give him credit. This is what they're doing this without Aaron Rodgers. Now you got to. This is a new era. You got a good young quarterback now, which hopefully he is the guy, and he looks like he is. He's put together a good first season as a starter, a better first season than Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre. So, and you got a young team that is going to continue to grow for years to come. You don't have to pay all these guys yet. Well, I don't expect Bo Melton to, if I don't even some of these guys I don't see having bigger roles because you got guys that are like Christian Watson's hurt. Like the main guys, you got Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson. Those are the top 3 wide receivers on the team. Then you got Wicks, and then you got Heath and Melton. I mean, I don't know what their roles are going to be, going forward. But yeah, like I don't expect, Bo Melton to, get a max contract somewhere else. It's for now. You're going to build. For now, you could build around this team in other areas. And then when you got to pay some of these guys, you'll cross that bridge when you get there. But I hope you guys get what I was trying to say. Basically, they got a young team that's not. You got a lot of players that aren't making a lot of money. Now, go address other areas that you need to improve on, like the defense. There's always improvements you can make to the offensive line. I mean, we'll see what happens with the the running back situation. If Aaron Jones, if this is it for him as a Packer, we'll see. Because he dealt with some injuries this year, and he's getting older. It just seems like yesterday, though. I would like to see a repeat performance from him. The first couple of times he played the Cowboys, because he torched them. The first couple of times he had in 2019 he had I think he had 5 total touchdowns. It was 4 or 5, and then his rookie season in 2017, he had a good game there too. In Dallas. That was when Rodgers threw the game-winning touchdown pass to Devontae Adams. That was in the regular season. But yeah, it's different now. This is a different Packers team. So and I hope I hope the game's competitive with Dallas. But again, the way Dallas plays at home, it's going to be tough. But you know what? If they can protect Jordan Love, they can move the ball against that Dallas defense. That Dallas defense is good. It's a solid unit, but it gives up a lot of points. It does, and you can move the ball against them. But if Jordan Love doesn't have protection, and you saw it in last night's game, with Washington and Michigan, you got to give them time. And if you don't, it's going to be a long day. And the Packers' defense has been bad, at points during the year. Yeah, it was good the last couple of games, but now you're going up against Dallas, and then you got to cover CeeDee Lamb, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but we'll see. So, but let me know what you guys think about the Packers making the playoffs. Even if they don't win, is this season against the Cowboys? Is this season still successful? I mean, I think it is. I think most people are in agreement with that. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the Bucs. Actually, before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys again, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So yeah, when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the Bucs winning the NFC South. Yeah, that'll be our third topic of the day. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about the Buccaneers winning the NFC South. Obviously, that was one of our favorite divisions to talk about throughout the year because we just had no idea who was going to win. At one week, it was the Falcons. One week, it was the Saints. But ultimately, it ended up being, and then obviously, the Bucs, of course, and the Bucs were able to take it. And they scared me a little bit because, they lost to the Saints, didn't look good. And then, they only ended up beating the Panthers 9-0. It just it wasn't an impressive win. But hey, listen, they were able to get it done. They're in the playoffs now. See, this is what worries me though, going into this playoff game though against the Eagles, is the fact that they were hot for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden against the Saints and the Panthers, now they look flat. And now this is why I think the Eagles can still win. But again, we'll see what happens. But listen, for the Bucs, again, like the Packers, I don't know if the Packers were supposed to be one of the worst teams in football, but the Bucs were definitely looked at as a team that was going to be really bad this year because now no Tom Brady, bringing in Baker Mayfield, it just seemed like, and you lost some guys, obviously. It looked like the Bucs were going to be a bad team, but listen, give them credit, and Todd Bowles, being the head coach, they were able to make it. Baker Mayfield finished with a 94.6 QB rating, 28 touchdowns to 10 interceptions, 4,000 yards passing. Put together a good season. Now, the final game of the regular season was not great. Well, the last two games of the regular season were not great. Baker, 137 yards passing, 20 of 32. It just wasn't great. And the Panthers, they left some points off the board. If we can go back to when that... Yeah, so there was a fumble. This would have put the Panthers up. Bryce Young connected with DJ Chark for a 43-yard touchdown, but he ended up fumbling the ball right before he crossed the plane, and Antoine Winfield picked it up. Actually, no, he caused the fumble. Jamel Dean, he recovered it. So that was one touchdown that was left off the board. And then I don't remember where the other one was because it was so the running back for the Panthers, Raheem Blackshear, he ran in a touchdown, but that got called back for I believe a holding penalty. So, if they end up scoring points out of that, who knows what ends up happening? The Bucs end up probably losing, and then the Saints end up winning the division. So yeah, I don't feel great for the Bucs going into this game against the Eagles, but listen, I'm happy for Baker. They could definitely win this game on Monday. They definitely the Eagles are a different team than they were the last time they played each other. So this is going to be a close game. Prior to these last 2 weeks, the Bucs were playing really well offensively. Baker Mayfield was playing well. So I'm hoping that they win. Of course, being a Giant fan. And the Eagles, the downward spiral that they've been on, I just can't believe it, like how bad they're playing. And now they got guys that are hurt. The Bucs have the Bucs have a really good chance to win the game on Monday. Obviously, we're not going to. We'll talk about it more throughout the week, and on Monday, of course. And it's just weird how they played on Monday night, right, in Tampa. These two teams, and now they're going to be playing on Monday night again. These two teams on ESPN. They couldn't give ESPN a different game. I don't know. But that's just how it is, because of course Fox has to get the Cowboys. NBC ended up getting the Lions and the they got 3 games. They got the 4:30 game, and then they got the on Saturday, and they got the Peacock game later that day, and then of course they have the Sunday night game, and then CBS only has 1 game. CBS, Fox, and ESPN all have 1 game. NBC has 3 basically, which I'm a little curious on how when it comes to the broadcasters, who's going to be doing those games? But we'll see. Because, I mean, Collinsworth and Tirico will be there for Sunday night, but are they also doing the Peacock game on Saturday? So are they going to do the Kansas City game, and then they're going to fly out to Detroit? Because they might have, because I know they had Iron Eagle's son do the Steelers-Bengals game for that NBC doubleheader. So maybe they're going to do the same thing. I don't know. All right, that got off topic. But anyways, with this division though, with the NFC South, I mean, listen, I hope that Baker stays as the quarterback at least for next year. I feel like, he has earned the right to start another year for Tampa. But I think, they should definitely consider, we'll see if they, maybe take a quarterback so he could sit behind Baker. Because I don't know. I don't know if Baker's going to be the long-term answer there, But I think the fact that he was able to play well this year and they were able to win a title, it was, it's good. It's good. It's impressive, what they were able to do. Because also they had, a messy cap situation, so that's why it was just like people weren't sure if they were going to be a good team, but yeah, they were able to finish 9-8, make the playoffs. I mean, listen, and now it's anything can happen. But if the Saints ended up making it, the Saints would have been coming in hot because the last two games were really impressive for them. They beat the Bucs, of course, in Week 17. And then, against the Falcons, they won 48-17, and they lost to them earlier in the year in Atlanta. And Derek Carr played probably his best game of the year, I would say, or I would say this was his best game. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, 22 of 28, 264 yards passing. They had no Alvin Kamara in this game, and they still ran the ball for over 150 yards. Their rookie, Kendre Miller, he had 73 yards rushing and a touchdown. Taysom Hill had 51 yards rushing. Jamal Williams had 26 rushing yards and a touchdown. A.T. Perry had 2 touchdowns in this game. Olave had one, which was an impressive catch. It got juggled up in the air, and he was able to hold on to it. If you guys know what I'm talking about. And then Rashid Shaheed caught a deep touchdown pass, a long touchdown pass. He had 3 receptions for 65 yards. Yeah, the Saints ended up. That was a blowout win for them, and it was close. I mean, the Falcons were up 14-7 after the first quarter. They scored on their first drive. Actually, both teams scored on their first. The Saints punted to start the game, but then Falcons scored a touchdown. Saints scored a touchdown. Falcons scored another touchdown. Saints scored another touchdown. So it was 14-14 after the first quarter, actually. So I don't know why on the box score it has. I guess because that drive led into the second quarter. But yeah, like the second touchdown, that was a 71-yard reception by Bijan Robinson for a touchdown. I mean, the Saints, just did not cover him, and he was left open. And Desmond Ridder actually had to get the start in this game because Taylor Heineke got ruled out because he was injured. And they actually ended up putting in Logan Woodside at one point. But yeah, Desmond Ridder threw a pick in this game. Yeah, and then at the end of the game, it was weird. So the Saints were in victory formation, but then they decided they just were going to run a play to get Jamal Williams a touchdown, and that just caused this whole, controversy because they ended up scoring a touchdown. Because Jamal Williams, he led the league in rushing touchdowns last year, and he had none this year. And the Saints got him a touchdown. Jameis Winston was in at quarterback for that play. Arthur Smith was not happy. He was yelling at Dennis Allen, and Dennis Allen in press conference apologized to him. And now Arthur Smith is out of a job. And now it's just talking about like sportsmanship and things like that. I mean, I guess you probably shouldn't have lined up in victory formation. So then not to catch the Falcons off guard, but I mean, it's 41-17 already. I mean, does it really matter? I mean, that's what, you know, that was on Jameis. Jameis is the one that, they orchestrated that. That wasn't. It doesn't seem like that was Dennis Allen's call. That wasn't Dennis Allen's call. But yeah, I do agree. Also, it's like, well, then don't give up 41 points to the Saints. This was a big game for both teams, and one team showed up and the other one didn't. Well, I mean, one team showed. I mean, both teams showed up. For the the first quarter and a half, but then it was just all Saints the rest of the way. So, yeah, I mean, for the Eagles, they're lucky they don't have to play the Saints because they'd have to go to New Orleans, and the way Derek Carr was playing the last 2 weeks, yeah, you're lucky the Saints didn't make the playoffs. But you know what? Shame on the Saints. If they were consistent throughout the year, they'd be in the playoffs right now. But, the early season struggles and the inconsistencies, and that's why you're on the outside looking in. But for a lot of these teams, it takes a while for them to get going, and the Saints, took them basically to the end to, be like, hey, we're the Saints. We got a good team. What are we doing? But yeah, they're on the outside looking in, and now we'll see what happens with the Falcons. Are they going to get a new head coach? Well, actually, they are going to get a new head coach. What am I saying? I just said Arthur Smith is going to get fired. Is fired. So we'll see what they end up doing there. Are they going to have a new quarterback? That's the other thing. Because there's rumors about Justin Fields maybe getting traded. Depending on what the Bears decide to do, if they say, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction, maybe it's possible. But or maybe they take one in the draft. We'll find out. In the coming months, we'll see what ends up happening. But yeah, the Bucs, NFC South champions. And like I said, they'll be playing the Eagles on Monday, and we'll continue to talk about that throughout the week. Because now it's just the NFL, and then before you know it, it's going to be over, and then then it's really just we talk about the draft, and I guess maybe here and there talk about spring football because that'll start up. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. So when we come back from our final break of the show. We're going to talk about the Steelers getting back to the playoffs as well. I mean, I kind of labeled the segments for both them and the Packers, but I tried to word them differently as best as I could because it kind of just, it's pretty much the same topic. It's, the Packers made it. We didn't expect that. Steelers made it. Yeah, it didn't really, well, the Steelers, I think earlier in the season, I think more people would say the Steelers were more likely to make the playoffs than the Packers. If you were comparing the two teams, if one of them was going to make it, the Steelers were going to be more likely to. But now they're both in. Well, then it changed. Like I said, roller coaster. This was another team roller coaster season. So we'll get into them when we come back from our final break of the show. So. For the final time, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final topic of the show, we are going to talk about the Steelers, another team returning to the playoffs after a year absence from it. They didn't make it last year. 9-8, and it looked like they finished 9-8 last year, but it looked like they were going to miss out on it this year with a better record. I mean, they finished, like I said, 9-8 last year, 10-7, but they got some help from the Titans, and defeating the Jags, and that's what got them in. But they are not going to. It's going to be Mason Rudolph at quarterback. When he took over, myself included, I thought, yeah, there's no shot. They're done. Mason Rudolph's not good. Now, again, probably still isn't good, but since he's taken over, the team has responded, and they've won 3 straight, and give them credit. They're a playoff team. They're a playoff team, whether you like it or not. And it's going to be tough because they're going to be playing the Bills now. Last year they played there and they got blown out. Now, the Bills, still shaky. Their quarterback turns the ball over in Josh Allen. But you're going to be missing some guys. I mean, you're not going to have T.J. Watt, who is the quarterback of the defense. And I don't think Minka Fitzpatrick's going to play in this game, but we'll see. But you got to give the Steelers credit because they, you lost the 2 last-place teams in the Patriots and the Cardinals at home, and it looked like they weren't going to go anywhere. But, they made the quarterback change, and they were able to get in. Somehow they were able to find a way. And are they going to go far? Probably not. They're probably going to be one and done. But, that just goes to show that, with the right head coach, they can make it. And I know some people are probably tired of Mike Tomlin just because, this is what the Steelers have been for so long, is they'll get to the playoffs, but they won't do anything. And this is going to be another year of that. Because there was some speculation, and I brought it up too, is, if the Steelers end up missing the playoffs and you end up losing you lose the 2 last place teams and you end up missing the playoffs entirely, is it possible that Mike Tomlin could be let go? Well, I think now because they made the playoffs and they made the quarterback change that led them to the playoffs, he's probably safe. He's probably safe. The Steelers, again, it was a roller coaster season for them. You start out with Kenny Pickett at quarterback, then he gets hurt. Well, he got hurt in the Cardinals game. So then you ended up having to go to Mitchell Trubisky, who was terrible. If you would have started him even after the Colts loss, and you never made that quarterback change, probably don't make the playoffs. You look at Mason Rudolph. So Mason Rudolph's stats: 3 touchdowns to no interceptions, and he has a QB rating of 118. So he hasn't turned well. I think he has a fumble loss, but he doesn't have any interceptions. Right? Did he have a lost fumble in the game on Saturday? Yes, he did. Actually fumbled the ball 3 times, but the Steelers recovered 2 of them. But no interceptions. Now, I think in the game on Sunday against the Bills, that's going to change. He's going to throw an interception. But, even ever since he's taken over, you look at Najee Harris's numbers. 78 yards rushing against the Bengals, 122 yards against the Seahawks, 112 against the Ravens. Had a touchdown against the Bengals, 2 against Seattle, and then 1 against the Ravens. Najee Harris has been running the ball better. Jaylen Warren, his rushing yards, his best game was against Seattle in the 3 games that Rudolph's taken over. 13 carries, 75 yards, and a touchdown. Though, who has really benefited, except for, the game against the Ravens, is George Pickens, because George Pickens didn't even have a target in this game. He did run the ball. He had 2 carries, or 1 carry. Sorry, it was only for 3 yards. But the 2 weeks before that, 4 receptions for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. The first game Rudolph started. Then 7 for 131 against Seattle. I mean, I'm not really gonna count the Ravens game just because how bad the weather was, but listen, the offense has played better under Rudolph. So, and we'll see what happens next year. How they approach this quarterback situation. Like, are they? I don't know. We'll see. Because you still got Kenny Pickett there, and he can play. It's just they're going to keep rolling with Rudolph, and I think they're doing the right thing. I mean, they're winning games. The offense is playing better. Why are you going to stop? Why are you going to stop now? And Mason Rudolph was the guy they drafted, to be behind Ben Roethlisberger because I guess he was going to be the next quarterback, but that just never ended up happening because he really didn't play well. And then he's still been on the team, was the third quarterback, and now he's got another chance, and he's making the most of it. He really is. So you got to give him credit. The Steelers' offense is playing better. And listen, I don't know how it's gonna be against the Bills. It's gonna be. It's not gonna. You're gonna have to score points. You're gonna have to put up points. But again, like I don't look at the Bills as this juggernaut from the previous seasons. This team is every team is beatable. So I think the Steelers they can. They could pull it out somehow. I don't know if they're gonna do it, but again, it's the NFL playoffs. Anything can happen. But I think the fact that they made the move of changing quarterbacks. I mean, that's the reason why they're here. And the offense again has picked it up. Mike Tomlin. I think any controversy over whether he should be let go or not, I think that's kind of out the window, at least for this year. But the Steelers, they kind of, they've kind of been in that they've been circling around, they've been running in circles for a couple of years where they're kind of just like, they have winning records, but they don't really go anywhere. When's the last time they won a playoff game? Because they lost to Kansas City. They didn't make it last year. They lost to Kansas City the year before that. Then they lost to the Browns. Didn't make it in 2019. They didn't make it in 2018. That was the year they should have won it. They should have won. They should have gotten to the playoffs, but they lost some close games. 2017, they had a bye and they lost to the Jaguars. 2016, it was 2016. That is a long time ago. When the last time they won a playoff game, and that was against the Chiefs when Alex Smith was the quarterback. Wow, yeah. So it's been a long time, and I think that streak's going to continue. I just listen. They could somehow win, but I don't think it's going to happen. Especially with the injuries that they have on defense. I just don't. I don't see it happening. But who knows? Who knows? Like again, the Bills aren't the same team that they've been the past couple of seasons. Can they still put up points? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they could turn it on. Like you saw it the other night. I mean, Josh Allen turns the ball over, but you know what? They put together a good drive. They're very Jekyll and Hyde. Well, he's very Jekyll and Hyde. So I don't know. It's going to be tough for the Steelers, but with the fact that they somehow made it, credit to them. Even though it wasn't pretty by any means. But like I said, anything can happen once you get to the playoffs. So. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it when talking about the Steelers. So yeah, that's the first game on Sunday. It's in Buffalo. Yeah, so if the Dolphins would have won, they would have been heading to Arrowhead. They would have been playing the Chiefs again in the postseason. So, and again, that's another team that, I mean, again, I still think the Chiefs would win if they played the Steelers, but the Chiefs have had their struggles on offense too. So we'll see. what ends up happening. Chiefs got their game against the Bills. Against the Dolphins on Peacock. So like I said yesterday, make sure to download it and get a subscription so you're able to watch that game. Really throughout this whole week, we're going to preview the playoffs. These playoff matchups and get you set. We're almost halfway. Well, tomorrow's going to be the halfway point through the week. So, and then obviously Friday, I'll do my picks for the games. And then wait till Monday. Well, actually, Friday I'll do how I think the playoffs are going to shape out. And then that'll be it, for the week. And then then the following week, next week, we'll preview the divisional round. And we'll move right along. The playoffs are going to go really fast. That's why you just got to enjoy them. Live in the moment with them, because it's going to be, they're just going to fly by, and then we're in the off season before you know it. So, I think these playoffs are going to be really good. There's some games this week where you're like the Steelers-Bills. My dad's a Steelers fan, so of course, I'm going to be rooting for the Steelers. But, yeah, it's going to be an uphill battle in that game. The Packers-Cowboys could be interesting, but I feel like that, that's going to be another one that could get ugly. But I'm excited for Lions-Rams, Browns-Texans with Stroud is going to be good. Chiefs-Dolphins, that could be good too. If the Dolphins have their full array of weapons, although the weather's not going to be nice, so that could hurt them. I'm looking forward to these games. Like I say for any game, I just hope it's good. Unless I need it to be a blowout. If when it comes to picks, then that's different. But I'm hoping for good games. That's really it, and that the Eagles and the Cowboys are not in the playoffs anymore after this week. That's what I'm hoping for. But I think we're going to be with them for a little bit. We might be seeing the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game, and I'm scared. I'm scared about that. So but that's pretty much it with the show for today. We'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. So make sure to tune in. We'll continue to discuss these playoff matchups. Look out for the shorts that'll be coming out throughout the day for both, the GSMC football podcast and baseball podcast. And then also the shows are uploaded to wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Music, Spotify. So, if you want to just go back and listen to the shows, they're on there. I got the shows, reposted up on YouTube, on both YouTube channels, broken down into 4 parts. That'll be, for this show, that'll be out later today. So, if you missed anything, you can watch them on both YouTube channels. So, with that is all the time that we have for today. I thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Take care.